Remember the Clone Wars, Tom? Remember that Anakin was Darth Vader, Tom? Remember Captain Rex, Tom? Remember that Jason is Kanan's son, Tom? Because Filoni remembers. What did you think of Ahsoka Episode 5? Ugh,
Uh, I just thought we were spinning our wheels. It
yeah.
felt so slow.
Yeah,
uh,
I don't have like my overall impression is that if this had been episode 3, I'd have been absolutely fine with it. I wouldn't think it was the greatest episode in the world, but not at where we should be in the story. This just felt like, like I spoke in an earlier podcast about Filoni just sort of overindulging in himself.
yeah.
This felt like that. This just felt like we can swear now, can't we? This just felt like Filoni wanking himself off. I'm serious. That is all I could think about while I was watching it.
Uh,
Um, it's great on like a production uh, standpoint, like seeing the Clone Wars in live action and stuff. It was really cool how they'd sort of
mm.
shot and filmed that, and cool visual sequences. But oh my god,
I was very confused about what the message was of this episode.
see, I have thoughts on that as well. This is going to be a bit of a quick one, is it? So, like, what did you like, Tom?
Okay, so Robot Man continues to have the most emotion in this series, which is
Yeah.
ironic.
Oh, David Tennant is killing it.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
he's like, I told them to stick together. It's like, oh man, poor dude. Someone put your arm around him.
Yeah. It makes sense for him as well. Like, I do kind of like that because droids in Star Wars, if they're not routinely memory wiped, they do develop like almost like a sentience and
Mm,
their own sort of personality. So I'm kind of cool with him being like that because he's very. I can't remember exactly how old he is, but he's really old, and obviously he's got the knowledge of every lightsaber ever constructed for so many thousands of years in him.
mm,
So he's obviously not had a memory wipe. So I'm cool with him sort of expressing emotions.
yeah.
Same way R2 does. But you are right. He's the brightest spot for me so far in this whole show.
And I'm like a real sucker for shots of like Star Wars ships flying planet side and interacting with all the elements. So when
Yeah.
like the ghost is sweeping low, I don't know why it just really does something for me, and it's it's reminiscent of when they attack Starkiller Base in the sequels, and it's like a dimly lit scene, and you just see the lights on the X-wings and TIE fighters illuminating the location. Because we're so used to seeing just like space battles, and the ship's only in like outer space and not really in an atmosphere or planet side. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. It does something for me. It was a bit useless, but it was cool.
Yeah.
And I did like some of the visuals, but the mist and the fog got like old really fast for me.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like, yeah, we're on the volume with a fog machine on full blast. And we've got to kind of hide like our budget limitations for this, so
Yeah.
we're
See,
just
I
gonna
I
do
I
that.
liked that that was how they were sort of getting around it, and you can almost kind of write it off because they're obviously like in
Hmm.
a realm of the Force or whatever. We'll get onto that when we get onto things we
Yeah,
didn't like, but I could kind of write off the fog as like, yeah, it's sort of part of the sort of the because they're not in the real world, so to speak.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I liked the lightsaber fight between Hayden and Dawson on a visual level. I'm going to
mm.
bash it to crap when we talk about the story implications, but hey, you see like Hayden's still got it. He's still got that prequel level intensity.
Mm.
Um, and the choreography is, and I bet he had some say in that, like when they were choreographing that fight,
Yeah.
because you just saw it. It was a stark difference from what we've had, even with Ray Stevenson and Ahsoka.
Mm.
Like it was something else. Yeah, that's about all I liked.
Okay, well, I thought there were some good ideas in the episode, and I think they're really executed poorly.
Yeah,
And there's the obvious shot of it flashing between Darth Vader and Anakin, which is like, if you're gonna do that and he's going into a fog, you're thinking, yeah, I would flash between the two here, and they do it. It's like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And then they play it up a bit when he kicks her back through to the world between worlds, and then it goes a bit too much flashy with Anakin and Vader. It's like,
Yeah.
uh, I, I need to talk about that later on because it's a bit perplexing for me. And I
I think the
actually,
overall idea is that this with this episode is there's a lot of visual style, but very little substance for me.
well, I actually really enjoyed the ending. It really had an epic feel to it, and the music is rousing, and it's all
Mm.
going in a good direction. I was like, oh, this director can actually bring it, even if the script's a bit weak. And then I saw it was Dave Filoni who directed it. I
Well,
was
gotta
like,
give him
oh,
props.
yeah. It's like,
Give him props when it's due.
I was like, well, he has some skill. So I guess that's what we liked.
Yeah. Let's just get on to what we didn't like. Yeah, this is such a wheel in the sand, a wheel in the
Mm,
mud, so to speak, of an episode. Absolute time waste, and I got some really bad feelings while watching it, like Last Jedi vibes.
calm down,
Um,
Jason.
I genuinely did like it almost felt like this episode, like how The Last Jedi sort of deconstructed the concept of Luke as this sort of optimistic, plucky, brave Jedi.
Yeah.
Felt like we were getting that with Anakin in this. I don't think it was Filoni's intention to portray this, but it almost felt like they were trying to tear Anakin down,
Well,
as a character, and sort of like deconstruct him, and like
that's something I want to touch on later about Anakin. Uh, some quick things I just want to rattle off really fast because I think Anakin and the world between worlds are going to be the main focus of the episode. Uh,
yeah.
so I was like, just going to rapid fire some bullet points.
Okay.
Because, like, I thought Hera was just Mother of the Year on Exposition Machine. Because
Yeah.
she says to Jason, uh, you can come out the ship, but we don't know about this planet, so keep Chopper close. 5 minutes later, I'm gonna fly my ship around and leave you here.
Yeah.
I was like, what? I mean,
Yeah. It,
are you
I-
really sure this is a secure place? And
Not good.
the
And I
exposition.
I really I didn't want that kid. Now we know why the kid is tagging along.
Yeah.
He's got the force, but
But
yeah.
it's just, her scenes are just crap. It's just exposition. It's like her and Jason on the ship at the end. So these are the worlds that saved us, and they'll take us where Ezra is? Yes.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, this is what gets me. You will have people defend this episode and be like, oh, they're not going to spell it out for you about what that sequence with Ahsoka and Anakin means. And I'm like, but you are going to spell it out to us what the fucking whales mean.
Yeah.
Like, pick and choose, dickhead. Uh, it's like, Christ. And it continues because you have Hera ask the robot dude about Anakin, and he says, intense. But Hera's most likely had conversations with Ahsoka about Anakin before because Ahsoka's spilling her guts out to Hera in episode 1 or 2 about, I left Anakin, oh, I walked away from him
Yeah.
and walked away from Sabine. It's like, okay, could you imagine if Hera's like, who's Anakin? Just awkwardly standing there as Ahsoka's spilling her heart out. It's just, ah, I mean, and my final rapid fire note was there's this whole sense of rebirth for Ahsoka. And
Mm.
it is a visual rebirth as well, because she's arrived out the water again and she switches her robes from grey to white. And I think Filoni's gone on record about saying how Ahsoka's taken some notes from Gandalf. And it's it's like you had this rebirth scene and I wasn't sure why. Like, I know Ahsoka's been pretty miserable for most of the season, and that's been a
Yeah.
complaint. And all of a sudden, like the switch is gone because the last 5 minutes, Ahsoka's like, "Oh, this is the warm, smiley Ahsoka we kind of remember."
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I felt that. That's something I sort of picked up on as well.
but then the thing is, I feel like this episode was, "Oh, this is the reason she's the way she is," and then I was thinking, okay, so the Clone Wars kind of wrecked her a bit. But then I've watched the Clone Wars, and for most of it, she seems like happy-go-lucky.
Yeah,
Uh, so
absolutely.
I was like, this feels like a car crash of what you want and what you've
Yeah.
done. And
Yeah.
this,
I felt that like sorry, you carry on, Tom.
sorry, I was like, this feels indicative of the entire show to date, where we have preconceived notions of characters that you've shown us, and suddenly off screen they've had this flip, only to kind of revert back to who they kind of were.
Yeah.
So it's been really jarring because we've seen these characters, well, Ahsoka specifically, and you wonder, okay, what really happened between Rebels and Jedi? Like, she failed to train Sabine, but Ahsoka in Rebels wasn't too bad. I mean, it's it's just a weird message he's tried to wedge in there, and it doesn't quite gel. Now the
Yeah,
concept,
I
sorry,
sorry, I hate the concept of like it's like he wants to make the Clone Wars serious now, and like we get that with and how like traumatizing it is for
mm,
Ahsoka. But it's like that it's just so completely at odds with what we've seen in the Clone Wars.
but
It, it's too much. It's too big. Like you say with the switch flipping, it's
you know,
just too big a switch. You watch the Clone Wars and Anakin and Ahsoka. You know, you can argue that yeah, this is how they really should have been acting in the Clone
mm,
Wars, but in the what we have seen of the Clone Wars, they're bantering. It's buddy cops and
yeah.
bouncing off one another and having fun to a
Now
certain degree, anyway.
Clone Wars towards the end of the show, it does get a little serious, especially with the Siege of Mandalore and the Order 66 segment. Uh,
Mm,
but let me turn something off. It does get serious there, but I think this could have been done with a different character because the concept of child soldiers, like these Jedi Padawans who are far too young to be witnessing war, uh, being like traumatized, is a fascinating concept. I just don't think it quite fits with Ahsoka's portrayal.
yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I'm down for what they were trying to do. It was more just how much it clashes with what's already been established. Same with a lot of things in this show.
But then here's the thing, it's not like it's established by someone else. It's like Filonis, the guy's history. I was like, you literally were the guy who wrote a lot of this.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
okay, we're gonna recontextualize and remake Ahsoka. I was like, "Oh, okay, not quite there." Uh,
Mhm.
this show is a mess. It is
Yeah,
a 2 hour film that's had to been stretched out to 8 episodes. At the moment, I think we're about 4 hours in runtime. And if you compare those 4 hours to episode 1 and 2, well, my bad, 4 and 5 of like Star Wars, like
yeah,
New Hope and Strikes Back, a lot has happened in those
yeah.
four
There's a lot of
hours.
movement. Yeah,
And I know TV shows can be structured differently, but you usually have more character depth and development, and you can get to know the characters more. But I feel like we haven't really done that. And that's been a lot of my complaints where you introduce like Marek and you think, I don't really feel anything when he dies. I'm just happy he's not Ezra.
yeah,
And
yeah. Yeah, the problem I think I have, and I'm kind of just repeating myself a bit from previous podcasts, is Filoni's acting like these characters have this supreme level of depth, like you would get with, like we run to Game of Thrones because it's what our channel mainly does, but like, like the characters in Game of Thrones are very very deep, most of them.
Hmm.
These just aren't like that. They do not have that psychological depth and that, you know, complex personality that you can sort of delve into and have this sort of like drag.
Yeah.
Like you look at Game of Thrones season one, and there's not actually a hell of a lot of action if I remember correctly. There is an awful lot of talking and character work, but it works because the characters are well written.
Mm.
Star Wars characters can be well written. We have old EU novels that show us that, like Plagueis and Bane. Um, as two like shining examples.
Yeah.
Dark Lord, Rise of Darth Vader, when he first went into the suit. You can have that, but these characters don't, because they're part of what I would call the plucky side of Star Wars, if that makes sense. Luke's reasonably deep for a hero's journey character, but he is still quite a shallow, I'm good because I need to be good sort of character.
Mm.
And yeah, like I said, Filoni's just wanking himself off at this point. He really is.
Well, I read a great comparison online between Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka, and they said the problem with this episode is it hasn't really developed a message. It's just saying this is the message of the episode, and I still don't know what the fucking message is. I was like,
Well,
it's
it's
the
trying.
message Anakin's an asshole.
Well, this is exactly when I said about the Last Jedi vibes. This
Yeah.
really felt like, I don't think it was the intention, but it was like it's trying to deconstruct Anakin and tear him down again. Like, so you have the prequels, don't you? You have the prequel
Yep.
movies, and I think you're not particularly positive about them, are you? I get the general sense you're
So
not the biggest fan of the prequels.
I I have to rewatch them, but I just whenever I think to it, I just think Anakin's fall doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And
So you
that's
have
the entire point of the prequels.
the So you have the prequels, and they come out, and some people like them, some people hate them. Um, but we all sort of agree that Anakin isn't done justice in those films. The character Obi-Wan talks about in A New Hope isn't really represented in those films.
Mm.
Then you have the Clone Wars come out, and it does that job for us. Like, if there's one thing I can say that's really, really good about the Clone Wars and very consistent, is that we see the Anakin that Obi-Wan talks about, the good friend, the loyal friend, the brave friend. He's still got all his flaws, his temper tantrums and the hidden darkness, but you see that sort of brave, noble, and loyal Jedi Knight that Obi-Wan
Mm.
speaks so fondly of, which redeemed the character for me. Like a lot of people look more favorably on the prequels these days, and I think the Clone Wars has a lot to do with that because of how it represents Anakin. And this show just that not this show, sorry, this episode just felt like it was deconstructing that. Like, no, he really was a bit of an arsehole. He was dragging a child to war with him, and he really didn't care for Ahsoka's feelings. Like, I want to praise Hayden Christensen's presence in this episode, because he does have that sort of leading man presence still.
Mm.
Um, and he is a good actor. Like, a lot of people bash him as an actor. No, he's a really good actor. But it just felt like he felt really stiff and cold in this.
Mm.
And it just paints it's taken that nice shiny Clone Wars Anakin that we all know and loved, and just, yeah, it's just tore him down. He's back to being this sort of borderline sociopathic
Well,
arsehole.
I was
Um,
waiting for him to turn into like the Mortis son. I was like, this guy's a dick. Like, this
yeah,
isn't Anakin, right?
yeah, I don't see, this is the thing, like, where when we talk about like interpreting what was happening, I don't actually think that's Anakin that she was dealing with.
Well,
Uh,
I
because for me, this whole episode was just one really long, dragged out version of Luke in the Force cave, in on Dagobah when he's
Uh,
training and he goes into the
yeah.
cave and confronted with Vader. This episode, for most of it, I know there's some stuff with Hera and the whales and that later, but this episode just felt like a dragged out, needlessly as well, needlessly dragged out version of that.
So
And that the thing is that scene on Dagobah. This is why people love the original trilogy so much. That I don't know how long it is. It maybe like 3 or 4 minute long sequence gets its message across so quickly, so concisely, and so effectively. Which is, Luke, if you don't stop being so impatient, you're going to end up like your dad.
yeah, but that was the comparison I read where they said Ahsoka has this revelation, and I'm thinking, where's this build up been? Because we've all been confused why she's been so miserable. And even if you sprinkled in some of these sequences uh, of like the war in the earlier episodes, like cliche, she's fucking
Yeah,
waking up from a nightmare and it's from the Clone Wars. Like, give us a reason to understand that she's actually haunted by these events in the past.
yeah,
Uh, because she seems really cool and casual for the most part. If you said to me, "Oh, she's traumatized," like, really? I
yeah.
was like, I never got that. Uh,
See, that's what I mean. This isn't earned. I think this
yeah,
revelation isn't. It's not earned. Like I agree with you 100%. Like that is probably the intention is that she's traumatized, but it hasn't been displayed to us
yeah.
enough. It's not. It's not. I don't want to say you have to beat someone over the head with it, but it's
But
inconsistent. You either have her constantly sort of showing that effect on her, or you don't, and she hasn't. Like you say, just one little sort of dream sequence. It's not enough.
what I'm saying though is that compared to Luke's journey, where he has the moment in the cave, and as a young viewer, you're like, or even as a viewer in general, it's like, oh, he's just killed Darth Vader, but was this cave about fighting himself? And then later on, you get the reveal that Darth Vader's his father, and it's like, oh, damn, so technically he is his own villain in a sense. And then the themes repeated in Return of the Jedi, where he cuts off Vader's hand, and he's done it in a rage. And he cuts off Vader's hand and he sees the wiring and he looks at his own hand and it's like he is part way through his journey to becoming Darth Vader if he continues this path.
Yeah,
And that's what brings him back because it's like, damn, like losing a piece of himself. Uh, and you think, oh wow, there is like a lot of depth to Luke's journey in that sense and comparing himself to Vader. Because it also humanizes Vader a lot more. Uh,
yeah,
those three films humanize Vader a lot more than I felt episodes 1, 2, and 3 did. Because in
yeah.
4, 5, and
Absolutely.
6, he is just that figure where he's like, I am the main henchman in episode 4. In episode 5, it's like, I'm the big man now, but I still answer to the Emperor. But I've got my own plans, and you start to peel layers back from Vader because you see him in his little vault where Piet walks in on him and he's having the helmet put down. And it's just a little sneaks like, oh wow, that's what's under the helmet. Like this is a life support suit because
Yeah,
he is wrecked. And then by the end of 5, he's got so much emotion because it's revealed he's Luke's father and he's trying to get him to join him. And then by the end of that film, he's so disappointed that Luke's disappeared that he doesn't even choke out Piet. Like he's so internally wrecked that
yeah,
throughout the film he's just been wrecking the Admiralty or captains of
yeah,
the Empire. But at
yeah,
that, everyone's like looking at him, was like, "Yeah, I'm getting a promotion because Piet's about to get dragged out."
yeah,
But he's so wrecked by it that he's like, I just can't even choke this guy out. I'm just going. I'm just disappointed. And
yeah.
you think, wow. And it's only a few scenes, but they feel earned,
Yeah.
and it adds layers to a character that was predominantly just a badass villain in 4, still a
Yeah,
badass in
just
5.
the heavy.
And then by 6, it's like you look at Vader in a different sense because uh, he doesn't literally have a face, but he has another name and he was someone else. Uh,
Yeah.
and you think, is he just stuck in a bad situation? Like, what is the story there? I mean, episodes 1, 2, and 3 doesn't do that justice for me, but that's what made Vader so iconic was he had a lot of elements to him in such little screen time. Because I think Vader has 20 to 30 minutes of screen time in the entirety of the original trilogy. And that is some effective use of screen time.
Yeah. Whereas with this, there's I don't see. This is the thing, and like you're gonna get hipster douches, Last Jedi supporters going, "Oh, you're just not clever enough to understand it." But I don't really get what Ahsoka was trying, what this realm was trying to teach Ahsoka, because I don't think it was Anakin
Yeah.
itself. I think it's totally a vision. It's the Force. It's like the cave. It's dark side energy or some sort of energy that's creating this vision for her. But I really don't understand the lesson because Ahsoka, as far as I know, has never sort of even come close to falling to the dark side. We've had that. We got that little Mortis thing, but that's non-canon. It's a dream where she's possessed, but
Mm,
she's generally always been good. So what's the lesson for her? Because she's not like Luke. It's okay for Luke to have that test in the cave because he's going down the same path because he has the same personality traits as his father. He's
yeah.
impulsive and he's reckless and he wants to do the right thing, but he does the wrong thing by doing the right thing, if that makes sense. Like he
Yeah.
wants to save his friends, but he knows he can't beat Vader if he goes, and it's a trap where he goes anyway. Ahsoka's not like that. Ahsoka's nothing like Anakin. She's not going down that same path.
Mm,
And that's kind of what I felt like the whole like the fight between them is about. It's like, "Oh, you're gonna follow me down the same path, Snips." And like, well, you've given us no indication that you're going to do that whatsoever.
I mean,
The only I can think of is they're trying to do like again a crappy Last Jedi thing, which is like you need to kill the past or
but
let go of Anakin or this is the thing I shouldn't be this confused.
I okay, so to go back a bit, Ahsoka left the Jedi Order because she was kind of betrayed or easily disposed by them, so to speak. Uh, she was gonna earn a title as Jedi Knight, right?
Yeah,
Or they were gonna let her back in after she cleared her name, and she was like, "Fuck you guys!" Like I was innocent. You was gonna drag me through the ringer, and she just leaves, and she leaves Anakin behind. I'm like, okay, but she returns for the Siege of Mandalore. Now, to me, that's her already being like, the Jedi Order is going down the shitter, and I'm getting out of here. But I'm gonna do you guys a favor and help you out with Mandalore. Like, I'll help. Let's do this. Let's end the war and let's be done with it. And her escaping the Jedi Order should have been like, boy, did I dodge a bullet there. Because they all got wiped out, so to speak. Uh, or they continued to do. They continued down the wrong path, so to speak. And then
yeah,
in Rebels, she's still around as like fulcrum, like trying to fight the good fight. Because she understands that's the right thing to do uh, to defeat
yeah.
this empire. And then she finds out Vader is Anakin. And I think, do we see
So,
Ahsoka again after that? Or is it next showing up in The Mandalorian?
uh, obviously, after she gets rescued by Ezra and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, it's just the Mandalorian. Yeah, that's
Mm,
actually when I mold it because I have only managed to watch the show once this time.
mm,
I'm actually thinking now, when I actually think through the sequence, it's obviously the message is Ahsoka blames herself for Anakin's fall, and that is just not justified. Filoni really likes to try and play that card, I think. I think he does. He has it in his head that if Ahsoka was around, Anakin wouldn't fall.
You
Where it's like,
watch, if you watch those first three films, it's Mother's death, Padme's death, responsible for his fall.
yeah, no, exactly. And again, like I'm going to say, wanking off for the third time and fourth time, but it's Filoni wanking off his own character. Like, oh, my character's so important, Ahsoka's so important, and no, like Obi-Wan was there, and Obi-Wan was like a father to Anakin. Obi-Wan was in Anakin's life a hell of a lot longer than Ahsoka was. He couldn't stop Anakin falling, and it's kind of like his. Some people say it's like his dad, other people say it's
I
like his
mean,
big brother, but
Obi-Wan did help Anakin fall down that, you know, ledge on Mustafar. He took his legs out. He could have not done that.
yeah, but you get what I'm saying, don't you, pal?
Oh,
Like Obi-Wan,
metaphorically. I thought he was
no,
being
like
literal.
Obi-Wan. If someone could have stopped Anakin falling at that time, it's Obi-Wan.
Hmm.
Like, why is Ahsoka blaming herself for it? But she's just not deep enough. I suppose you could maybe stretch it a little bit to like maybe that's just how she feels personally, and she's mulled it over in her head. Maybe I could have stopped it. Maybe I could have stopped it. I maybe give him the benefit of the doubt with that, but
You know
to us,
what?
the watcher, it just doesn't feel earned. I don't think.
This episode, I've said it on Discord, it is just Scrooge light, where Scrooge goes back through time to see events from a different point of view and how it's worked out and how it should have been different. Uh, and it's like, I'm going to return a better man. It's like, hello, tiny Jason. I will get you a ship too. We're going to get a big whale and we're going to fly away. We're all happy. Merry whale day to you too. Uh, it's like, okay. But I think this show really could have done with having flashbacks, adding nightmare sequences, uh,
Yeah,
giving us actual visual cues of
yeah. We
like
need that establishment. We need
like
to establish that this is going on in Ahsoka's mind.
if you want an awesome intro, show the fight between Ahsoka and Vader on Malachor. Uh,
Yeah,
show that fight because I was thinking if I was to do a fan edit of this, I would get the audio from that fight where Anakin's talking, and I would take the visual from Kenobi where Anakin's face is revealed.
yeah,
And you could marry those two images together because you can't really see his mouth moving. And we're like, okay. Uh, see if you could play with it. Like you've got Vader, you've got Anakin, put him back in the suit, get some flashback sequences shown. Like, you know, maybe it's probably weird fan service. Maybe she's fighting Darth Vader at the beginning, and as she's like beating through him, she's revealing Anakin. Uh,
mm,
because I could not make sense of Anakin's portrayal. So I spoke to somebody and I said I was confused whether this was the Force, was it Anakin, or was it Ahsoka's construct of Anakin? Because if it's Ahsoka's construct of Anakin, Anakin's an asshole. Like,
yeah,
that's what she remembers him as. It's like, okay, dude's a
yeah.
dick.
I think that is what it is. Like if I've got to lay my chips down, I think it's the force. It's obviously the energy of this realm, sort of conjuring up something from Ahsoka's mind.
And if it's a construct of her mind, I'm like, yo, you're definitely not like this dude. Like what you showed of Anakin, like even as a kid, you've showed a contrast straight away. You're saying, oh, we should be doing this, or we shouldn't be laughing or making jokes. But that's why she got her name Snips, right? uh, and it's like, okay, this feels more like if you replace Ahsoka with Luke Skywalker, it might make a bit more sense.
Yeah.
uh, because you would fear about becoming your father more because you've almost gone down the same path, but Ahsoka never has felt like she's even wandered down that same pathway. Uh,
See, I think the more I think on it, I don't think that's the message. I think the message is more her dealing with her like self blame, like how she blames herself for
yeah,
his fall. I think that's the more I think about it, that's because yeah, I'd like I watched it once, so
it
I haven't been able
was.
to take like detailed notes, but that's that now that I'm thinking about it again and I'm
Mm.
mulling it over, I'm thinking that is the message. Like she's got to let go of the blame she's placed on herself
But then Anakin keeps
in
saying
falling.
you have to keep fighting to live. And I'm thinking, what's the fucking message? I actually just need it spelled out now. It's like she needs to keep fighting to live. I was like, okay, but she's been doing a pretty good job of that. Like, Balin just kind of dunked her unexpectedly, but you can write that down to the fact that she was fighting one handed because she disabled the ball.
Yeah,
Uh, and she hurt her hand. It's like, I buy that. It's like, leaves room for her to come back and just annihilate the dude later on. Uh, it's it's like you have to keep fighting. Okay,
yeah.
for what? Like,
This
what has
whole
she been
podcast,
doing for the last 20 years?
this whole podcast, you could just hear with me and you, pal, that our brains are like frazzled by this
Yeah,
show at this point.
like,
It really is like just one big mess. But I agree with you on the fighting point. Like it's was she even like fighting for at this point? Like stopping Thrawn, I guess.
but that's the
Like, what's the
thing.
like? This is the thing. I don't feel like Ahsoka has ever really had an arc, like she's never really had a destination in her journey.
Well,
Like, think about Luke and his journey, or we can even take it back to Anakin. You take it to Anakin's journey. Anakin's journey is to falling and then to redeeming himself. That's the end game, saving his son and giving his life to destroy the Sith. That's like his end game. Luke is like I to rebuild the Jedi Order. We all know it goes in the sequels, but that's like his. Is Ahsoka really this sort of obsessed with Thrawn?
well,
And
the
that's her mission in life is just, "I have to stop Thrawn coming back."
and let's not forget it's the rebels Thrawn. So it's not like, oh, this dude's done some serious work. It's like, bro got taken to another galaxy by Ezra and a bunch of space whales. He's not
Yeah.
exactly doing work.
Yeah, this is what I mean, it's nonsensical to a degree. Like, I know fans will cream their pants at this. They'll absolutely love, the live action Clone Wars stuff, and
Hmm.
they will love it, but so far this show, the style and no substance, it really is.
But I'm not sure if we're just a minority of fans. Uh,
We probably are, to be honest.
it's like, okay,
Because we're trying to scrutinize it as well, I suppose. We're watching it with a bit more of an objective eye. We're trying not to like fanboy out over it, but
yeah.
even with that, it's still I don't know. I would call before Disney took over anyway. I would call myself an incredibly dedicated Star Wars fan.
Hmm.
I absolutely love The Mandalorian. I liked the Book of Boba Fett for what it was. Just like bombastic fun. Um, Kenobi was a mixed bag. Um, but yeah, this show,
So I have one guy
despite it
who's
having the best score, despite it having some of the better visual effects, it's not getting me.
I have one guy who says, "Oh, you should just enjoy it all." Like, I was like, that's such a dumbass way to think. It's it's like I've had a fantastic steak at a restaurant. That steak is like the gold standard. Like, this is my baseline. Is like, if a steak tastes as good as that, that's a fucking great steak. If it tastes worse than that, okay, maybe it wasn't as good. But then you can build up layers because you look at this film and you have A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back out of Star Wars. Those two films are arguably two of the greatest films of all time. Not just Star
Yeah,
Wars films,
not
but
just Star Wars. They are like
yeah.
Empire Strikes Back at one point was like in most critics' eyes was like number one. I think it's shifted now, but
But
yeah,
Empire Strikes Back is almost like the how to make a sequel.
yeah,
That and Godfather 2 are usually ones that are heralded as this is how you make a sequel, or really great sequels that improve on the original. And this is why I have such high standards for Star Wars because those two films are like fantastic. Return of the Jedi could have been a fantastic third film if they didn't rehash a lot of elements from the previous two.
yeah. I think people. I would agree with you on that. Like, I think with Return of the Jedi, because it does have these moments that are so strong, like the Luke, Vader, and Palpatine
Yeah.
stuff is it's on par with like Empire and A New Hope, obviously. But people do forget that the Empire is defeated by a bunch of teddy bears, and
Yeah.
it's just a Death Star again. Like they did it before Disney did it, so
Yeah. And what I'm saying is like I think a lot of people acknowledge that maybe Return of the Jedi could be your favorite of the three, but it's not the best of the three.
yeah,
Uh, I know it might be like splitting hairs, but if you look at it objectively, I think the other two are much stronger than the third one. Uh,
yeah.
Again, maybe it's subjective. Who knows? But
God,
I,
we've tangented there, pal.
huh?
We've tangented there.
But what I'm saying is, people are so enamored by like these moments of fan service. It's it's what takes me out of it because you have people like Star Wars Theory dropping out 9.5 out of 10s for this episode of Ahsoka. Uh, and it's because we're
What
looking for
for?
different things.
Yeah, what for? What has this episode achieved?
I'm looking for like character and story. I
Yeah.
don't care if Anakin or Hayden is brought back unless it's effectively done.
Well, look at Hayden in, and this is something I wanted to ask you about. If I because I don't know if it was just me, and maybe I need a second watch to reevaluate it. But Hayden in the Kenobi show, I know we both have our
Yeah.
gripes with the Kenobi show. He's fucking fantastic, isn't he? Like he only has that little scene,
Hmm.
but God, he puts so much fear into me, and his performance chills me to my core.
Well,
You know the you didn't kill Anakin, I did
that one
moment.
scene almost made the entire series worth it.
Yeah,
Like,
in
but
this, he felt a bit flat. I don't know if it's down to how he was directed, or you know, just he didn't really want to be there. Maybe maybe they just dragged him in and said, "Here's
I
money." He didn't seem like he was all that bothered about being there.
I think his problem is trying to play different facets of Anakin he's never actually done. So it's like,
Yeah,
oh, you've got to be like the inspirational leader. And it's like, okay, I never did that in the films. He's an actor, so he's supposed to be able to do XYZ. But if you're an actor, you're thinking, in episode 2, I did this. 3 years later, I did this in episode 3. At no one point was I ever really like an inspirational leader. So how do I tie this in to be the same guy?
yeah.
Uh, and it's like it's a wacky one to have to think about because he's having to play a character that was probably more expanded upon in a cartoon show than he was in the films. And he's thinking, huh, like, so that's like my character now? I was like, okay. Whilst Obi-Wan feels a bit more consistent because he's probably a bit more two note or one note, so to speak, where he's got like that dry personality with sarcasm and humor. Uh, whilst Anakin has to show different emotions of a struggling Jedi, uh, of a person thrown into a new world, so to speak. Whilst Kenobi kind of has his shit together. uh, it's it's a weird one, but people want to throw out 9.5s out of 10 or say it's the best thing ever. And I think, okay, if that does it for you, fair enough. Maybe that's your investment where you don't care about XYZ, or maybe you can just shut your brain off better than I can, or we've got different
Yeah.
standards. Like, you're welcome to that. But then it's just a mess. I'm probably still tilted by this Mustafa dickhead. I was chatting to on Discord. He's such a prick.
Oh god.
It's like, oh man, it's yeah,
See, our energy is coming. Like I've noticed throughout this whole podcast, pal, we're struggling to like even complain about it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed, like
I'm
this
still
this whole
confused.
yeah.
Like,
So
what happened?
yeah. So where do you think it's going then, Tom? Because like we'll just keep circling on this world between worlds thing.
So
Point blank, it's confusing. It sucks. It's great on a visual front, seeing all that stuff in live action, but it's just confusing
was
as hell.
was she in a different world? Was she physically in a different world? Was she just drowning in the sea? She was really close somewhere. I mean, they could hear
Yeah,
lightsabers. Even Hera could hear lightsabers. What the fuck is happening?
yeah, because that's the thing as well. Like you look at sort of the again, oh god, I'm such an old EU snob. But like you look at the old law, and when these Force visions happened, the environment was still there.
Hmm.
Um, you know, for Luke, the cave remained. It didn't. Oh, but then again, I suppose the sequels shit on that, don't they? With Rey, she has a vision, and the environment changes. So, whatever. I was going to make a point about how previously it's not been established that the environment changes, but yeah, it has because Disney did it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, they did it in Force Awakens as well. Kind
yeah,
of, where Rey touches the lightsaber. But that
yeah,
felt more
yeah.
like the
That was
journey of
what
the
I was.
lightsaber than Rey. I don't
Yeah,
know. People just fucking touching elements in this show, and all of a sudden they've got that new skill unlocked. uh, anyway, where do we think it's going?
at least we can talk about this to some degree a little bit, I guess. Like, obviously they're going to the other galaxy and they're going to match fraud. I mean, I would absolutely love for Filoni to, you know, throw us a curveball and they end up in the wrong galaxy just for the lols. But that would be funny. Like, so where's Thrawn? Where's Ezra? Oh fuck, we're in the wrong galaxy. I would love that just for the lols, but they're obviously they're gonna go to the galaxy, and they the first planet they come across, they're gonna find Thrawn.
Hmm.
That's my speculation. Or like what we were talking about in the last episode, I do perhaps think that Thrawn might have established some kind of mini empire, and
Yeah.
they're gonna like run into it
Hmm.
like maybe with some native alien species, because he did that in the old law, and you know,
Yeah.
Filoni's a hack. He's a hack who needs to rehash old stuff. This show is showing us that. So I think that's what's going to happen. And I'm starting to really like what you said about Ezra being sort of quite a wise Jedi Master, and well, not Jedi Master, but quite a wise Jedi, and being like, look, I took Thrawn away. Why are you here? You've just given him the key to get back. You
Yeah.
know, I really like that idea, and I'm hoping that's how it's going to be, because that would be interesting to explore. Because then he's going to be really pissed off at Sabine,
Hmm.
pissed off at Ahsoka. Um, you know, there can be some drama. You know that thing called drama that you kind of want with your characters. instead of everyone just being like in universal agreement, we need to go here. Okay, let's go here.
but not
We need
forced
to get this. Let's
conflict.
get this. But I don't think that would be forced if it
No, I'm
happens the way
joking.
that
It's
you.
like
Oh yeah,
there's the difference between like having good natural drama and not like forced conflict between characters where it's like, oh, they need to just not get along for some reason.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Uh,
But I think that would be an interesting dynamic. That's where I'm hoping it's going. It's not where I think it's going, but it is because I have no clue where this is going. He keeps curveballing me, that
yeah.
fucking prick. Um, but that's where I hope it. That's where I hope it's going.
So I'm not sure. Like, we've got 3 episodes left, and if past this prologue, I'm thinking, are the last 2 episodes just a huge blowout of action? Uh, and if that's the case, like, what happens? Otherwise, the flip side is the final episode, Thrawn returns to our universe, like the last 5 minutes.
See, this is something I'm thinking about as well. Like I don't want this, but I've The Mandalorian did it, and but at least that show had the strength in its first season. I'm talking about.
Mm,
At least that show had very strong episodes leading up to it. But I think Thrawn might show up in the last, second to last episode, maybe the penultimate,
mm,
and at the end of it as well, not like at the start of it, at the end of it, and then he'll be a big threat in that last episode. They'll do some kind of they'll rinse and repeat like they did with the Mandalorian. They'll do some kind of have some kind of like mini victory for the good guys, because obviously you want kids to watch this show and get along with it. But then yeah, the big cliffhanger is actually, like how the big cliffhanger of the Mandalorian season 1 was that Gideon had the dark saber.
mm.
Gonna be like that. The big cliffhanger is that Thrawn jumps and he's gonna arrive in the Star Wars galaxy. I can't remember what it's called now, but the Galaxy One,
The
the Star
galaxy
Wars.
far, far away, not far, far,
Yeah,
far away. uh, so, if that happens, what's next? Because I thought this was supposed to lead into a film. If this is supposed to lead into a film, we've got the Grand Admiral who hasn't really been established.
yeah.
So,
This is the thing as well. Like they really. Oh, I'm getting angry now, like starting to get that nerd rage inside me. But they really are relying on you knowing about having watched Rebels, watched Clone Wars. They're relying on it so hard. And I'm just thinking now back to these past episodes. They could have been utilized so much better. We could have had some moments. You talk Ahsoka. You talk about this Thrawn guy. Like some character who's never like met him or something. You talk about Thrawn cry. Why is he such a big deal? And then Ahsoka can flashback us. Like, oh, he did this, he did this, he did this. They're leaning on Thrawn's reputation to fans, the fan version of Thrawn,
so
and I'm getting frustrated with it now. I just had a little nerd rage moment then where I was like, "Oh, for God's
okay,
sake, waste of a show! This is a waste of a show."
episode
Last week,
6.
yeah,
Episode 6, they arrive in the new galaxy. Ahsoka also arrives because she gets a shortcut. And they find Ezra. Episode 7 is a flashback episode to Ezra retelling how they've got to XYZ to current time, catching us up. And episode 8 will be like, oh, we have to stop Thrawn. And we get Thrawn's first reveal probably at the beginning of episode 8. And
yeah,
he probably has to do something to outsmart them. But I said to you my theory. I sent it to you in chat where we saw this end shot of Rebels that doesn't fully match up with the end shot or the shot in Ahsoka's TV show,
yeah,
where she's in a white robe and has a staff, and like the building looked a little bit more wrecked rather than like
mm,
refined. So my theory is that Ezra doesn't make it back from the other galaxy, but Thrawn does. And they fight Thrawn in whatever part they're in, like the galaxy they're in, our galaxy, the Star Wars galaxy. They defeat Thrawn, and you then end with that sequence where it's like, Low 4 took a bit of a shit kick in, but we're going to go back and get Ezra back now. Uh, it's just because the costume changing, because it's by the same guy. I'm like, that's such a weird thing to not have them right.
Mm,
Uh, because he directed Ahsoka when she first appeared in live action. So he would have had some say over the costume design there, and he'd have been like, "Oh, Ahsoka wears a white robe now," uh,
yeah,
but she doesn't. So I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe they have to, by the end of this series or the end of the War with Thrawn, she has to go back and find Ezra again, and that's why she's not in the sequel trilogy or whatever, because she's in a different galaxy. Or maybe they decide we've saved the world, we're going off to live with Ezra or wherever.
yeah.
Uh, I don't
Mm.
know. That's what I think, but we'll see. Do you have
I,
anything else?
just know that like this whole like for people who actually listen this far in the podcast, I'm really sorry. I'm getting like frustrated and stuff. Doesn't help that I'm tired and I've got a chest infection at the moment. But
Yeah.
it just it's frazzled my brain this episode. Like I genuinely thought I was like, okay, we got the crap work out of the way in those first three episodes. Apart from episode three, I think episode three is an absolute waste of time. But those first two episodes and you know, episode four, first two crap works out of the way. Episode four comes along, great. I'm ready. I'm now invested. I'm now ready to go, and I've just been completely deflated again. I'm back to the point where I don't care. I'm gonna watch it to see Thrawn show up.
Did you? If Thrawn only shows up in the last 5 minutes, was there ever a reality that you imagined that we would have seen more of Anakin Skywalker than Thrawn in this TV show?
See, I did think that they would bring Anakin back for this. I'm really shocked they haven't brought Luke in. Um,
Well, we got a
just
mention
because
of Leia.
yeah, like I know why they don't bring Leia in, but
Yeah.
I'm really shocked we haven't had some Luke yet, because he's a crowd pleaser and he's been great so far in all these TV shows. There hasn't been any, you know, scenes like he was great in The Mandalorian, obviously in the fight scene and stuff, and at the end, and he was really good. I think he was amazing in the Book of Boba Fett as well. Um,
He is
and
a
he's just a
bit too
solid
robot
character.
for me
Mm.
in personality. I think visually he looks great, but personality, it's like, oh, you
See,
are
I just
like you.
I think that comes down more to how Disney sees Luke going on from Return. That's like Disney's version of Luke is that he does try and be a sort of traditional Jedi,
But
and he does sort of try
that's
and
the
be
wacky
like
thing because
stoic
he's
and
not a traditional Jedi.
yeah, this is what I mean. Like we talk about the Legends EU, they did it really well with Luke. The issue they had in Legends was that Luke became too powerful. He became so powerful that you had to insert into the story reasons why he would have to hold back or why he'd want to hold back. And then when he actually faces someone who's like a legitimate challenge, it's basically like Star Wars' version of Cthulhu, Aberforth.
Yeah.
That's how powerful he became. That's the only issue I have with Legends Luke. But everything else is just done so well. Like he looks at why his father fell to the dark side. He actually looks into it. Oh, it was for love. Okay, well I'm going to rebuild my order, but this time Jedi can love. They can get married. Let's avoid another. Let's avoid another Vader. Um,
Like, that's what I mean. It
Whereas this, it's just like he's trying to rebuild the order that was toppled by the Sith. Why would you? If it didn't
like
work the first time, why are you trying to do it again?
like it was broken because they tried to make Anakin fit a really strict dogma compared, and Luke's way older than that. So you'd think, oh, Luke just showed that you don't have to be so strict with how you're raised. Uh,
Yeah,
Attachment is what made them stronger. Attachment was what allowed him to bring Vader back. Without attachment, well, that's kind of how it all kind of
oh,
crumbled. You could say Anakin's attachment caused him to fall. Luke's attachment caused him to bring him back.
yeah. And that is the point, and like Luke shows, like he shows both the Sith and the Jedi that they're wrong.
hmm,
You know,
like
both of them.
he shows that emotions aren't bad,
Yeah.
or attachments aren't bad, because it not everyone fits into the same kind of pigeonhole, so to speak. Uh, you can have it different. But anyway, rating the episode. What did you rate it? Because on our poll, I only put it up, 30 minutes before this podcast. Uh, it's some interesting results.
Okay.
Uh, so we've only had 200 votes now. I should have done this yesterday, my bad. Compared to like 1,000 previous votes. 60% give it 9 or 10 out of 10. 22% is like 7 or 8, and 8% is 5 or 6, with 11% being other. Like, oh fuck. People are not gonna. Liam, be careful with the number you pick, bro.
Right. So if this had been episode 3 of the show and they had been a little bit more like, I think if I watched it again, I would pick up more easily that the message is Ahsoka dealing with her self-doubt
Can you
regarding
watch
Anakin.
it again and let me know, please?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
Um, so if that were the case, if this were episode 3, I would probably be with those guys, you know, like with the like base in terms of like just overall quality, it would be like that baseline 7-8. But
Mm.
it's too late to be doing this. It's too late in the show to be spinning, like you said at the beginning, to be spinning the wheels in the mud. Um, so if I'm judging it on where it's at in the story, like, and where it's at in terms of like the overall story, I want to give it like I genuinely just for how much it confused me, I want to give it like a 2, but
Oh,
but
you know how
I would.
people hate watch Star Wars? People would be hate watching this podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I love Star Wars. That's the thing. That's why I judge it so harshly. I want it to be better. It's in the hands of a $1 billion company.
Mm,
I feel like it's okay to expect good things from them. I feel like it's okay to feel like they should know what they're doing with the franchise. That's kind of why I feel the way I feel. For me, I couldn't. I don't feel like I don't know what your thoughts are, but I wouldn't give it any higher than a 5.
okay, so 5.
Yeah,
Is this a new low in our Ahsoka podcasts?
I think we went 4 on one of them on episode number 3.
Did you? Bloody heck. So, not as bad. Ooh, let me go have a look at that, actually. I was like, holy shit. Liam's just tanked our podcast. We went from the highs of an 8 out of 10 straight back down.
It
So,
just this could have I think why I'm so
So,
angry at
Tom,
this
it turns
episode
out
and I'm so frustrated is because it could have been great if it had been earlier in the story or earlier in the season and things were made a little bit more clearer, so that you could kind of pick it up on a first time watch. Because the more I'm mulling it over, the more I'm actually starting to piece it together now. But
uh,
yeah, it could have been great this episode. And I think that's why I'm so angry because it's not like episode 3 where I just think absolute waste of time.
yeah.
It's just like it's in the wrong place in the season, in the story. It's in the wrong place in the story, and it's just not quite clear enough.
Okay.
Um,
So,
yeah, whack
5.
it with a 5. Yeah,
5 out of 10
bang
it
smack in the
is.
middle.
So, it's
Yeah.
the second best episode of the season. Because the other ones, I think the pilot, episode 1 and 2, we gave a 4.
Oh God.
So it's like, boy, there's been a lot of 4 out. We've made it quite far, for a show that's been 4 out of 10.
I've got to. I've got to have faith. I talk about they doing the fan version of Thrawn, but that is kind of why I'm sticking around. I want to see what they do with him. I mean, in the old EU and even the new stuff with Thrawn, with is it Timothy Zahn who does the books?
Yeah.
That's all been great, you know. So if they can do that character justice and they can set up a like, I'm just kind of hoping this show sort of springboards the conflict to follow, so to speak.
Mm.
I just hope it does a half decent job of that. You know, like how my book, like book number one, it's not particularly like bombastic in
George.
action, but it's
And
like it's building to something bigger.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this builds to, something bigger. Because I genuinely I had such high hopes for this show. I really did.